Hi everyone, I'm Ravindran and I'm going to discuss on fiscal policy. Fiscal policy can be defined as the policy of the government regarding changes in taxes, government spendings and government borrowings to affect the aggregate demand in the economy. Objectives of fiscal policy. The main objective of fiscal policy is to control inflation or deflation in the market, that is, maintaining economic stability. Fiscal policy helps in diverting resources from undesirable channels to desirable channels. Fiscal policy helps in achieving welfare objectives, that is, basically it reduces inequalities between rich and the poor and increases welfare. Stances of fiscal policy. There are three main stances in fiscal policy. They are neutral, expansionary and contractionary. Number 1. Neutral. This is the equilibrium phase for the economy. In this case, the government spending is entirely funded by the tax revenue and there's no need of borrowing. Number 2. Expansionary. This is the phase where the government spending exceeds tax revenue. This happens during the time of recessions. And finally, number 3. Contractionary. This is the phase where the government spending is lower than the tax revenue. This is undertaken to pay down the government debt. Methods of funding. Generally, there are 4 methods of funding. Number 1. Recovery of loans. Number 2. Disinvestment. Number 3. Borrowings. And number 4. Taxes. Number 1. Recovery of loans. The central government grants loans to various states inside and outside the country. When the government recovers these loans, they get additional money which can be used for the utilization of the welfare. Number 2. Disinvestment. Government holds equity or shares of various public sector enterprises. It can raise money by selling this in the market and leads to reduction in assets held by the government. Number 3. Borrowings. It basically means the government borrows money from various institutions, being it said inside or outside the country. And finally, taxes. The most effective way for the government is to increase the tax rate or impose new taxes. Instruments of fiscal policy. Generally, there are 4 instruments in fiscal policy. They are public debt, taxation, budgetary surplus and deficit, and government expenditure. Public debt. Public debt refers to borrowing by the government within the country or from abroad, from private individuals or association of individuals or from banks. Generally, public debt can be divided into 3 major categories. Number 1. Internal public debt and external public debt. Number 2. Productive debt and unproductive debt. And number 3. Short-term loans and long-term loans. Internal public debt. When the government borrows money within the country, be it from any citizens, financial institutions or the central government, it is known as internal public debt. Whereas when the government borrows money from abroad of international market, be it from any financial institutions or a nation in particular, it is known as external public debt. Productive debt and unproductive debt. Productive debt. The debt that is expected to create assets which will yield income sufficient to pay the principal amount and interest is known as productive debt. On the other hand, unproductive debt is the debt which is raised for the financial unproductive assets and heavy unproductive expenditures. Short-term loans and long-term loans. Short-term loans are the loans which can be repaid within a period of 1 year, whereas the loans which can be only repaid after a period of 1 year is known as long-term loans. Taxation. Tax is a legal, compulsory payment paid by the people to the government. It is the most common and effective way for the government to influence the aggregate demand of the economy. Generally, there are two types of taxes: direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct tax: when the liability to pay and the incidence lie on the same person, it is known as direct tax. Examples for direct tax are income tax, corporate tax, etc. Whereas when the liability to pay and the incidence lie on different persons, it is known as indirect tax. The examples for indirect taxes are service tax, sales tax, etc. Budgetary surplus. Budgetary surplus is a situation where the revenue earned by the government is more than the actual expenditure. The surplus amount can be used for the repayments of loans or can be kept as a reserve for the future. It can also be used to make desired purchases, or it can be used for the development of the economy. Budgetary surplus is a sign which shows that the government is running the economy efficiently. Budgetary deficit. Budgetary deficit is a situation where the revenue earned by the government is less than the actual expenditure. In this situation, the government reduces its expenditure on public welfare, increase tax rates, and may even opt for borrowing. The surplus from the previous years can be used. Budgetary deficit is a sign which shows that the government is not running the economy efficiently. Government expenditure. During the time of inflation, the government decides to reduce its expenditure on public welfare like police, military, courts, education, etc. This leads to fall of aggregate demand and it leads to reduction in inflationary gap. During the time of deflation, the government decides to increase the expenditure on public welfare. This injects money in the economy and helps remove unemployment and increases the aggregate demand. This leads to reduction in deflationary gap. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and understood the concept of fiscal policy. Thank you.